We need like.
Jonas is in second place.
Jake, quickly
God.
give him the prize and the tiara and the sash.
Oh my God! Thank you, everybody.
He is now Miss Recap of the week.
Miss Recap.
Yeah.
Yes. So where did we begin last time?
I think we were in the Horn of Abaddon.
Yeah, we just arrived.
You want it from there? So, to do a recap then, as you want it, at the beginning, Talengard was created in the creation of the world,
Yes.
Calamity, where all gods and titans formed it, as such. It is in the sea, quite a distance from mainland Golarion, and has always been that way. And the original people who inhabited it were the dwarves. Traveled here from the Underdark and simply enjoyed this new land with no opposition. As the years controlled, though, as many years, untold centuries, a new group of people, the Irenaeans, arrived. A barbarian tribe who had been expelled from their homeland by more civilized people, or so they would say themselves, came and took over where the dwarves had left. The dwarf had been fighting a little bit in somewhat of a civil war, some of them splitting into the Duergar faction, and that had weakened them quite a bit. Well, maybe we should skip ahead a little bit.
I enjoy the story though.
Well, all right then. I'll continue a little bit then. They, as I said, they were weakened by this civil war. As it was, and so many of their strongholds and such were actually abandoned, even as the fields were tilled and everything was ready. And the Irenaeans really moved in and named these basically what is fallen dwarven strongholds on the surface as their own cities. Many cities, almost all cities in Talengard, have names that are derived from one, their ancient dwarven name, or whatever the Irenaeans called the place they found. That has, of course, been twisted over the years, and the Irenaean language is not the same as the normal common one. They have their own tongue, and so the names now Matherin and Gastenhall and whatnot. Gastenhall not being the original name of the area, but all in all, things have changed quite a bit over the years. Well, the Irenaeans settled in. They spread to almost all the islands. In the north, there were bugbears and monsters. No one really cleared them out after the dwarven sort of fall, if you will. They simply could not. They were outbred by the humans, really. Who didn't really care much for them as the dwarves tried to reclaim some of the old strongholds. They failed and were driven to the mountains, where they were then sort of forced to stay with their Duergar kin, sort of fighting over the last strongholds in there. Monsters arose and were powerful, and these barbarian kings basically fought each other all the time. Then the now new sort of Talingardian people, Talirian people as they're called, the Talirians arrived in Talengard, and they also quickly spread. The Irenaean, by the way, are also the people who originally moved, or another tribe of those moved to Utak and established the Utak people, who have stayed the same basically from that time, while the now Irenaeans have changed quite a bit over the years, over the centuries. Well, that's all well and good, of course, but it just so happened that these new humans did not really like the barbarian kings and the way they did things, and so they basically conquered the whole damn thing, pushed the Irenaeans back into the north.
Manikai?
Yeah?
I can't load Limbo. I get stuck at 2.
That's not important. Let's keep on the story.
I think it's very important. We need to fix Tina's issue right here.
Actually, mine won't stop working as well, but I'm going to ignore that.
Mine froze. I'll try again.
Alright, I'll continue then. Well, they did not take well to the barbarian kings, and as such, they conquered the areas and pushed the Irenaean back to the places where they had basically a home front survival. They could not, Talirians could not push them out of the Caer Briar, even if they did come close. The native Irenaean in that sort of forest was simply, well, they weren't the first to be attacked, of course, so they had the advantage of knowing that these people were enemies. And they also had a home front advantage that armored soldiers and such could not really... They could not take advantage of the trees and the monsters and all the things in the forest that these guys had learned to live with for so long. And so they took all the choice pieces, all the hard land and the south, and gradually conquered all of it, having these little, basically, princes all over Talengard. One man of House Baka, half-elves who were blessed with the long lives of elves, and so could take advantage of plans much longer than anyone else, actually ended up conquering all the others and uniting them. When it was united, it was revealed that this was with the aid of Asmodeus, the Prince of Hell, as he had conquered this land and forged it into the kingdom of Talengard. A mighty nation indeed. All the different kings united, he sat down and began his rule. That is all well and good, and we can jump quite a few years into the future, because here some cleric goes into a valley and, well, finds a new religion. At least a religion he had not imagined, that Talengard had not heard of. He walks out and spreads it, and soon this idea of Mithra and the whole idea of virtue and law instead of ruling by power and state begins to seem to the people like something they actually would want. This brings the house of Darius, a small, very small noble house, basically county, under the leader Marcadian the First Marcadian the First of House Darius, carrying the Mithran star as his symbol, on a field of was split between blue and white. He began a new civil war, this time between humans instead of dwarves. He, as a matter of fact, allied with the dwarves in the mountains, promising them that they could come out and live among the people. Something they had done before, but never sort of as an official thing. They had never had their own sort of... Now dwarves have their own little quarters and communities inside of Talengard, primarily in Gastenhall. Prior to that, they had simply been basically ignored much of the time. With their support, arming a small force, and with his own enormous tactical genius, he fought the decisive battle, being on the plains of Timberlin, outside the capital city. The two armies met and basically decided the future. The Barcan King, King Jarad of House Barca, half-elf as his ancestors, rode a griffin, which is also the symbol of House Barca, and the other one, of course, was Marcadian of House Darius, after this victory, known as the Victor. He was a very young upstart paladin at the time, a paladin of Mithra. This conflict is the most famous in Talengard's history, and basically because the Victor was so outnumbered, and it just seemed insane that he would ever win. But apparently he was so committed to his holy cause of ridding the land of this other house that he won. While House Barca pretty much relied on mercenaries for their armies, as they had not really had a need for a standing one, since they owned everything. Well, not the North and not the Kiabraya, but everything they cared about.
Sure.
Yeah. The Victor said one, and that's all well and good. And he walked around and he clenched the horn, he did this and that. He basically took a good hand and began removing all the evil that had been infecting this land for a very long time. And he was doing a damn good job of it. Now, he, as it wasn't a half-elf, as the prior kings, and so his plan, although long and large in scope, did not really see him living to fulfill them. as it was. He did a whole damn lot in his time, so to speak. He ruled for 46 years, as a matter of fact, and it has been the best age in Talengard's history. Pretty much every city has a statue of the Victor, and he is sort of widely renowned as a great man, even among his enemies. He's even respected. Some even still fear just his spirit for what was capable of doing. After his death, his oldest son, however, Matthias, ascended to the throne and became King Marcadian II. He was called the Learned, as he was much more of a scholar than a king, and he actually didn't really care about state. His father had already cleansed the whole thing, and so he spent the taxes that his father had gathered on building a grand library in the capital, and renovating the old great palace from the Bagan times, the Adarium, as it is called. And he, as soon as just a part of it was done, he moved in there and basically wasn't really seen since. He had a younger brother, also son of the Victor, which was Prince Hallen, who was not so reserved. He had no official power, but basically his older brother had left, so everyone looked to him for guidance, and he gave it very happily. He was a soldier more than a scholar, and he looked like the Victor himself. He was very pretty, a stout man with a sort of a king's appearance, basically. It just so happens, though, that he was also a complete madman. He was actually convinced that his mother, who had died in childbirth, giving birth to him, hence the Victor had no more than 2 children, was actually not the queen, but an angel of Mithra. And so he believed himself a demigod who was incapable of doing anything wrong. He started out just acting on this in small ways. He always dressed in white, and actually got a pair of magically grafted wings for himself, so he could fly around over the capital like an angel. As he began to sort of let these things control him, the visions began, or so they say. Angels began whispering that maybe he should replace his brother, become the true and immortal master of Talengard that he was meant to be. The king, of course, got these reports, but he said they were disturbed, and he refused to believe them. "My brother would never do such a thing. This is just a bad jest," is what he famously, officially sort of answered to these reports. It just so ended up, though, that the angel, as he was known, acquired himself a priceless magical sword that burned with his rage, and ended up basically killing his brother, splitting him open and spreading his blood all over everything. And so he became Marcadian III, called the Immortal. His brother had only reigned for 6 years. At first, it was sort of controversial, and many sort of didn't really like the new king, as it seemed that he had killed his brother, but it quickly became the consensus that this was most likely the divine will of Mithra, and he was probably Mithra's messenger. At least that was the orders. Within a few days of the crowning, when he was actually declared king, some weird decrees began appearing. For example, Mithra's holy day would no longer be the summer solstice, but instead his own birthday. He also ordered the military to prepare an invasion to Hell, and his court wizards to build a giant gate that would make a permanent 1- or 2-way entrance to Hell, all 9 of them. He could then send his army into Hell and conquer Hell for Mithra and his holy light.
Sounds like a great and wise plan.
Finally, the people had enough. As soon as he began actually building the thing and spending a lot of money on it, sadly, one day his wings gave out, and as he tried to fly out of the highest spire of the palace, his magical wings weren't on his back. He fell to his death, and it is in some circles questioned whether or not paladins were seen with him when he fell from the top of that tower. His most trusted servants. Fortunately, the scholar had in his reign got a son who was now, well, the grandson of the victor, and didn't seem to be either mad or, uninterested. He had, of course, stayed out of the Adarium and the capital, and spent a lot of time out questing as an unknown knight. And now, 29 years old, he looked very much like the victor himself. He returned to the capital and was crowned Marcadian IV. So his reign began. He realized quickly that he needed to solidify the state. The state was on the brink of civil war, as many of the people who had been dislocated or removed when the Barcans fell out of power really did not like this whole plan of invading Hell, spending all the money on a pair of wings, building a giant library for all of it. It really did not seem like what they signed up for in some time. Luckily, Marcadian IV discovered that the cult of Asmodeus must have been using black magic to drive the kings mad, and so, as was some say the most brilliant solution since the victor's civil war, he declared that the Church of Asmodeus had done all the mad, and so it was their fault everything happened. This was the beginning of the Purges. The Knights of Valerian became Inquisition for a time. High priests of basically all sects and other religions than Mithra were burned on the stake, and for 12 years Talengard burned and bled from everything that was not perfectly as the Zealot, Marcadian IV, wanted it. He died young of a mysterious illness, something that sparked even more controversial things as the last accepted neutral religions were rooted out, because surely they must have been the harbingers of such a disease. After this, a new king was elected, his son, Marcadian V. He has ruled for some 16 years. He's capable, energetic, he's a good king, and really has done much to put the bad memories of his family away. He's beloved, and he's proven again and again that he is the closest Talengard will ever get, most likely, to a true heir of the victor. He personally led an army to relieve the Watch Wall after another bugbear incursion. It was here that he won the title The Brave. Talengard is currently still ruled by Marcadian V, called the Brave. He has continued the prohibitions against the cult of Asmodeus, but he has not continued the purges. He has allowed the church to do much what they want with sort of a free leash, although he does keep their hunting of magic users in as tight a leash as possible. One thing he hasn't done, however, done very well at least, is to produce heirs. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even have a son. He only has a daughter, who is currently 19. As of the game, she is now 20.
Yes.
Now, it was so happened, from different reasons, that some people were captured and forsaken, something the Zealot introduced, which basically meant that those who are forsaken cannot be accepted as citizens or have rights. It is a burn mark that lasts for life. There is no redemption after it. And so those people are sent to Brandiskar to be killed. In Marcadian V, this has not been done a whole damn lot. And as such, the security might not have been what it once was.
And look what that got him.
Yes. And the rest, as I say, is history.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was somewhat of a recap.
Sure.
Now, last session, I believe you began exploring the city. Basically, we had only been here for a couple of days.
Yep.
And finished the week. You found a few things. You found the prison, I believe.
Yes.
And you recalled Hellhound at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
You went to the docks, the cleric's quarter, some farmers' estates, found a few things here and there. Nothing too huge. Most of the session was really done at the prison using it with player interactions or character interactions, different characters laying there a few talks of what is to be after all this, and sort of settling into the city. I think maybe this session we'll get to see a little more of what hides under the surface.
Well, there were 2 things we did last session, which was finding that weird woman that I don't like but everyone else does,
Oh yeah.
and the Wizard's Tower.
Yeah, the Wizard's Tower, where we learned that the Baron is probably, or the Duke, sorry, is probably still in the city somewhere because he didn't show up at the tower, and we placed our devil spies in the tower to report to us immediately if the if he shows up and tries to seek shelter or tries to get teleported out.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Tina is still restarting a computer.
Yes, it seems she's having some problems.
Seems like it.
Well,
Meanwhile,
good thing we had such a long recap.
meanwhile, let's go into town,
Yes.
I guess.
We are at the beginning of day 7, I believe.
Right.
Or no, we're at the end of it.
You're right. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, something should probably happen.
Oh no!
Something might happen.
Oh no!
Oh, well, I guess you can begin that then. As long as it doesn't involve Cash. Cash is out riding on a horse.
Yeah.
Sure. On a horse? That's not a horse.
Horace.
Oh, Horus.
Hellbark, as it is known.
Okay.
Formerly known as Darkbark. I have a quick question, Malachi, though. Where in town was the Bugbear camp? Like the big one where fire axes hold up?
It is in the nobles' quarter.
Okay.
Is you haven't really been there much.
No.
It seemed that it has been quite ripped through.
Is it in the palace itself?
No.
Hmm.
That it seems completely broken and smashed, and the ceiling isn't really there anymore.
Do we know what that is?
No, that is another sort of palace building.
Okay.
Tower in the palace. You can see there's sort of a shadow here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, anyways, at some point during the evening, Zacharias is going to get another knock at his door.
God damn it. God fucking damn it. Alright, Zacharias, it'll be a few minutes again, and then Zacharias will open the door and peek out.
And it's not actually Telemondus, it's Chiron this time.
The furrowed brow of Zacharias sort of unfurls a bit, and he looks at Chiron and be like, almost a sight of relief or something similar. And he looks at Chiron and says, "Yes, Chiron."
Chiron looks at you and says, I take it you expected someone else, I suppose.
There has been a few knocks on my door of late.
I know I was there, kind of.
You never have explained exactly how that works. Zacharias sort of squints at him.
What do you mean how it works?
Well, where are you when Telemundus takes over?
I'm here. Chiron doesn't understand the question, apparently.
But it is Telemundus out and about and speaking, yes. So where would your mind be while he's doing so, I wonder? Zacharias peers at him.
Oh, I see what you want to ask. You do not have to worry, I'm always in control. If he gets sacked because I let him.
Oh, so it's your fault I have this portrait. Zacharias motions towards the portrait inside the room.
Well, if you put it that way... I thought it amusing, at least.
Yes, well, what can I do for you, Karen?
Well, how's your research going, first of all?
It is going forward. I have made some interesting advances as of late, and it's certainly starting to take shape. And if Karen sort of looks around the room, he will notice that he doesn't really see much of the research. He doesn't see, like, there is certainly a work table and a lot of stuff and books and things like that scattered about, but it doesn't see like any magical, like grand magical work actually in here.
So, what is it you're actually researching?
Sakurai
It must be
smiles.
pretty special. At least you make it sound that way.
It is the grandest project I have ever undertaken, and it has been years in the making as of now. It is something I realized soon after we escaped Brandonscar, and something that simply needed to happen. I do not wish to elaborate further on this currently. He smiles. I am a wizard after all, and we like to keep our secrets.
I see. Well,
Don't worry, once it is done, I will most certainly inform all of you.
that's not what I'm here for, after all, I suppose. Zacharias will see that Kyron has the letter that they found in the wizard's tower in one of his hands, and the notes of the wizard in the other.
Alright. Well, Zacharias
Yep, Kyron will turn to Zacharias, and I figured you might be interested in maybe some more background information to some of these names, since I know them,
yes.
kind of.
Yeah, there's certainly something interesting I thought about. Zacharias looks around. Do you wish to discuss this with the rest of the group as well, or is it just for my ears?
I don't think they care, so...
Very well then. Zacharias, opens the door fully and lets Karen in.
Karen will walk in, put the letter and the notes on the floor, take a step back, then hesitate, look at Zacharias.
Zacharias will sit down in one of the chairs in the room.
I guess you have to endure him after all. He smirks slightly. As you see his transformation that you have seen before, you might not be familiar, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Familiar with it yet, but it's certainly not a new sight. As his body blurs and slightly grows. And let me change my token just for completeness here. If I figure out how to do that, because apparently it was a long time. Where's my token? There it is. Huh.
Should probably heal yourself also, by the way.
Probably. I'll do that later. It doesn't matter. And after a few moments, you see the very familiar face or the very familiar, like, general structure of Telemondus.
Yes.
Who doesn't really seem as excited as usual as before.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really want to be here, perhaps. He's kind of reluctant in general. As he bends down to the notes, completely ignoring Zacharias, not even looking for the portrait. That's got to say something.
Yeah, wow.
As he looks at the letter and says, your human companion wants me to share some insight on these names. He figured you might be interested. He seems rather reluctant in general.
Zacharias nods. Certainly, Jean-Laurent the Black is a legend. He's used to scare children, and farmers continually tell stories about sheep and cows disappearing, and he gets the blame for it. He is almost an institution when it comes to terrorizing the common folk. Zacharias smiles. If he actually still exists, and you are actually his offspring, yes, that would be quite an interesting tale, I think.
Telemondus hesitates. Scarce children? You do know it's said he's older than time itself, and I do not doubt the truth of it. And you use his name to scare children?
Zacharias smiles, a facetious smile. Yes, well, he has not been very active for the last, decades. People's memories tends to fade quickly.
Oh, you should pray that he doesn't decide to intervene. It would be bad for all of us. And yes, I am indeed his son, in your words, I suppose. But that's... Telemondus seems to be completely out of it right now, because he just heard that... Well, anyways.
He's
there-
scandalized.
Basically. There are two more names that I may be able to shed some light on. Or, well, one at least.